Welcome to another episode of Outside of the Classroom. One of the, I should say, one of the primary reason for this podcast is to share stories of people building careers and building businesses. And today we have two people who are working together to build, I say business in sort of quotes, but we'll hear more around really what their focus is and what they're trying to achieve. They're entering year two or coming up on year two.
Yeah.
They're doing well according to them, and which is fantastic, based on year one. So we'll hear about what led them to sort of the success they're having now. We'll get into some of the details around what it means to be working together and building that business. So this this episode of Outside the Classroom, I would describe as more around building a business, where we're talking with two, I would say, entrepreneurs as they are starting off and really trying to build something to create an impact. So let me introduce Paul May and Derek Bartlett to the podcast. Welcome, Paul. Welcome, Derek.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Great to have you both on. So just for some context, it's Thursday night. I think we can say night, almost 8 p.m. What both of these gentlemen work and have started this business, which is where I think most entrepreneurs start, right? They are not, not all, but some, started as sort of that expression on the side of your desk, right? So that's where we are now. But let's dive in. Let's get in. Let's talk about where you are now. So how would you describe your current phase of the business? I kind of talked about the years in operation, but who are your customers, if I can describe them as customers?
Right. Right. So let me talk on this one. We're really in the, I guess you'd say, early growth stage, so to speak. We're pretty much focused on building some strong systems, expanding our program offerings, and also, something that's close to us, like deepening our community impact, right? So, we're just in our second year, being established as a competitive sports club, with basketball. And, it's kind of ironic, well, I know we'll get into it, but, on how we got to the stage already, and, our primary customers, young athletes, families, those type of things across like Peel and Halton region areas. And, getting that growing presence, throughout the greater Toronto area. So, and, right now we're doing boys right now, but, soon to develop towards girls also within our program. And we just keep on building and we just keep going, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I should ask, or maybe I should have said this at the start. So this is Legacy Basketball Academy,
Right.
LBA, and you guys will obviously talk a bit more, but just for our audience, which is global, you say Peel region, which is in Mississauga, Ontario, which is one of the big provinces or states in Canada, and Toronto. I think a lot of people may know where Toronto is. So you're focused in that region right now, Paul, in the
Yes, there and the surrounding, like there's Halton and all that also. Yes.
gotcha surrounding region. Okay, and just maybe a bit more around this, what LBA or Legacy Basketball Academy intends to do. Like what are you doing for, I guess, the boys, or maybe explain a bit more around that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we call ourselves an academy because it's bigger than just, basketball skills and development. We're trying to teach life lessons. And what I mean by that is we're trying to teach them how to deal with adversity, how to be resilient, how to be organized, how to be structured, how to be fundamental, how to be disciplined, how to understand how to take direction and execute, but also how to be future leaders and understand how you can, again, hold yourself accountable, hold your teammates accountable. And so we talk about being an academy. We kind of facilitated uh, different parties coming into our business as well. Not just Legacy Basketball Academy members, but we also have now contract workers coming into it. So we are trying to establish it whereby now it's not just about myself and Coach Paul. It is a really a village that's coming together to build up some of these kids. And as Coach Paul talked about, we're now in year 2. We now have 2 teams, so we're a little bit ahead of schedule based off of our trajectory. But and we're serving cities like Brampton, Mississauga, Oakville, Burlington, Malton, Milton. So again, when we talk about Halton, Peel, and Peel Regional, those are some of the cities that we're really trying to cater to as we scale and grow this business.
And so Derek, I know you just talked about some of those what I'll describe as qualities, behavioral and personal skills, and we'll talk more. But at its the initial offering is to train, these are my words, sort of young boys in the the sport of basketball, develop the skills to be competitive and compete at higher levels and progress in the sort of basketball leagues. Is that a correct way to describe it, or...
Absolutely, absolutely. We consider ourselves to be a youth basketball program, and for us, again, obviously everything we talk about is centered. It's athlete centric with basketball, right? So for us, we always welcome kids who come from other sports as well, but we are focused around teaching basketball IQ and what I would call EQ as well.
Okay, and it's through this basketball training or through this academy is where then you also develop these other skills around that you talked about, right? In terms of leadership capability, responsibility, how to see things through, commitment, I'm sure as well, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think for us, it's about developing those skills on the court, but then having them transcend off the court as well, right? We want to not only develop basketball players, but we want to develop members of society, people that can be role models that younger kids can look up to, that are going to be doing community work, volunteer work. Like, we're trying to develop people that can make an impact in their community and go on to do bigger and better things. And for us, it starts with basketball,
Right.
but our goal is for it to actually, like I said, carry and build on to other aspects of their life as well.
Yeah, yeah, and so just a specific question, and I got another one for you. What's the target age group of these students or participants? What's the right word? I don't know.
So right now we have a 2 U14 teams, so under 14. So again, we have kids that are 12, 13, and turning 14 with the 2 teams that we have now. But as we go further through this call, we have plans to expand to both younger and potentially older kids as well, because our goal is to try and help, like I said, not just, young kids, but those who are going to be transitioning into university as well. And those who have the ability to actually help, people, younger kids as well, and give back to their community. So for us, we're exploring the idea of having, U16 kids who could come back and maybe help some of these U14 kids develop at a faster rate or give them tips, because again, it takes a village, right? And so for us, we want to make sure that it'll actually help the older kids as well, because when they're giving those instructions, the next time they step on the court, they'll think about the things that they said to those younger kids and apply that to themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. So under 14, but looking to grow on both sides, right, of that bracket of age, right? Okay.
Spectrum across, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And so let's even back up then. How did you get interested in wanting to focus on this area? And I'll even go further and say, was it basketball was the means to develop these skills, or were how did you, or was it just basketball and you kind of saw this connection to these other, let's say, life skills? How did you say this is what we want to pursue? How did that come about?
Well, we both, the funny thing about it, we both have different directions as to how we came into this. Like for myself, I've, played basketball at a very high level. I've done training, done summer camps and all those type of things. And really what it was is that I had seen, a lot of gaps within, different programs that are out there. For myself, I have 4 boys. So for me, it was kind of like, if the person's not going to do a better job than what I can do, they're not going there, right? So, and I found myself to be continuously in search of that, but in the same time, been training my boys all this time. So now when I finally put them into rep, and that's how I ended up meeting Derek, we'll talk further on that down the line. I pretty much was, told that, what am I doing? I should be actually looking into this, based on, my upbringing, like my own experiences and all those type of things. And never really thought about it until I really got into it. Right. So for me, that's really what it was. And it's that trust factor too, because, as a parent, this is your child that you're putting out there to trust someone else to, show what's best for them in the direction they're going. Right. And if I don't feel that you can do a better job, then I have to do it then, right? So those kind of things.
Right.
So that's the way of looking at it on my side.
So for you, Paul, it was a personal, like a really personal connection to your own boys and wanting to do something to make sure that, as you said, right, if you're not going to do it uh, as well or better, then I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that. Wow. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks for that. Dude.
Mhm.
And Derek, what about you? What was your inspiration, I'd say?
Wow, that's an interesting question. So I fell into coaching by complete accident. So before I started coaching basketball, I was coaching soccer. And for 2 straight seasons, we had the coach of the soccer team quit. One was legitimate. He got a new job and moved away to another city. The other one just didn't have the time. And so mid-season, each year, I'd actually fill in and pick up on the coaching responsibilities. And so in year 3 of soccer, I was like, you know what? I'm tired of this. I'm going to do it myself from the get-go. And so I started coaching soccer. So both of my kids were playing soccer. Then they decided that they didn't want to play soccer anymore. They wanted to play basketball. And so I was like, oh, okay. And so I coached basketball in high school, believe it or not. When I was in grade 11, I was coaching grade 7 kids because we were raising funds to go to travel to Florida for tournaments and stuff like that. So I've always enjoyed coaching and leading, but I never really thought of myself as a coach until I started coaching soccer. Then when I got into basketball, I was still coaching soccer because I was good at it. And it wasn't until my wife was like, but why are you still coaching soccer when I need you in basketball? So I was like, okay, great. Went over to the basketball side, and much like Coach Paul, I was horrified by what I saw. Some of these coaches, it felt like they were just going through the motions. They weren't really engaging the kids. I saw kids doing things that were incorrect, and they weren't being, stopped to be like, no, do it this way. And I was like, as a parent, if you don't know, you just figure, hey, you know what, they'll get better. But if you do know, you're like, wait a minute, this is highway robbery. And so literally, I walked down to the owner of the organization. I said, I've coached soccer before. I believe I could do much better than the coaches you have here. And he was like, pump your brakes. I said, no, well, give me a shot. And so I started coaching house league. And so I was coaching my oldest. And so we actually went all the way to the finals. And I saw great success. And then he decided that he wanted to play a rep basketball. So I said, okay, fine. So he went to go try out for the rep team. I was sitting in the bleachers with the parents in the first tryout.
That's right.
Right? The second tryout happened, and I was again horrified with what happened. I can't make this up. I walked down to the basketball court. I talked to the owner for about 20 minutes. I talked to some of the coaches, and they literally came with a tryout list with all the names on it, and they gave me a coach's jersey and said he's going to be coaching one of these teams going forward. So I literally came out of the bleachers during a rep tryout and said, I'm here to do a better job. And literally, that's how I started coaching. And ironically, what I didn't know at the time was my oldest and Paul's oldest, they were really good friends. And so when it was time for me to start building, I knew I was going to have what I didn't know at the time, but Paul's son and my son together on the same team. And so that's how Paul and I first really got connected and got to know each other because his son was going to be on my team. And that's kind of the whole trajectory of how this journey started with us.
Well, and I could say to you, from my perspective, that actual scenario, I remember being one of the parents and standing there and seeing what's going on. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And, someone that we both knew, that's actually what it was. He looked at me and he said, what the hell are you doing? Not in such nice words, that's what he said to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just had my son here for tryouts, that kind of thing. And then, when I heard the parents talking about, Derek went down there to go down, to the court and everything. So I'm watching and I'm looking what's going on and I'm like, this is chaos. What's going on? And then, from there, I kind of was like, I'm not sure about this program. I'm really not sure. Right. And then my son, he wanted to play, but I saw there was talent. There was talent there, but nobody knew what they were doing. So we'll get further deeper into this, but it's just a little bit of part of it, just so
Yeah,
you can see,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, it's two different sort of entry points to want to start this, right? This inspiration, but I can definitely hear I'll use the word the passion, right? In wanting to fix something or make sure things went a certain way. So I got asked this question. So then, and I have some knowledge of this industry from a distance. I mean, my nephews have played basketball. My niece is very competitive in basketball as well. So I know the leagues or the idea of that from that point of view. Um, but what would you say is that makes LBA stand out? Like, what is it that you think, believe you bring that the other providers do not have? Like, I'll use this word. What's your competitive advantage, right?
Yeah. Um, can I say something first? Let me say something first there.
Go for it,
All
sir.
right. So to be honest with LBA, it's, even though we're in our second year, we're still brand new, right? We're still brand new. A lot of teams don't know who we are, but it really starts from Derek and I. It is really what it is, right? Because we both have established a relationship, or even, I should say, what's the word I'm looking for? A reputation. Sorry, a reputation that, in our own rights of how people know us and seeing us as trustworthy.
Mm.
And also, we have, I guess you could say, we have the resume, as individuals to be able to speak with clout to say, yes, you know what, I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
And we understand that, though, that, that's good for now. That's really good for now in terms of building it, because we're synonymous with LBA, because we're always saying LBA, Legacy Titans, like all that kind of stuff. And parents and coaches and referees are approaching us, right? But we do understand, from the corporate side of things, because of where we're coming from, that it has to be bigger than us. That's like, next level of what we're looking at. But that's really where it comes from. That's one huge differentiator is the both of us. And we both could walk into a room, on a court, and we could literally speak to just about everybody inside of there, or they'll approach us and they'll be so, I guess, ingrained to what we're speaking about and what we're about, because we're not here to be like, oh yeah, I played this, I've done that, or anything like that. We're actually listening, and from that we understand the struggles, and we know that, a lot of parents are trying to navigate through things. So it's much deeper than just your brand looks good or whatever you look like in lights. It's like, what are you doing for the families? What are you doing for the kids to get them better? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, for us, our competitive advantage is really the way that we engage, the way that we engage kids, the way that we engage our players, the way that we engage refs, the way that we engage opposing coaches. We've had coaches approach us and say like, wow, your kids are really passionate. Like, how do you get them to that point? Or, you guys are really good. And we'll say, hey, we're a brand new team. And they'll be shocked because they think that we've been playing together for a while. And they don't believe it. We've also been told that we are patient coaches. And I think, we've studied a lot of different organizations. We've worked for several different organizations, so we've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. And so for us, what we've always said is we've always tried to bring a culture to other organizations that weren't open to the ideas or concepts that we've had, because it's different. And being different sometimes isn't always welcomed, as I'm sure all of us can appreciate. But because we know what it takes, because we've both played basketball, because we've both seen kids being coached correctly and incorrectly, for us, it allows us to step into this with a fresh perspective. We describe ourselves as a boutique basketball academy. And so for us, it's about quality over quantity. So there are a lot of organizations, for example, when they try to launch, they'll launch with 6 teams, but they won't have enough coaches because they want to get that scale very quickly.
Yeah.
For us, we said, no, no, no. We're going to be very hands-on with this and give our all to build our credibility, to build the brand and build our reputation. And for us, we feel that is going to be what is going to allow us to, really hang our hat on and solidify our name in this industry and be successful in the journey that we're on, because it's a journey, right? We're competing against organizations who've been doing this for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And so they've got a ton of, experience on us. But what we have is an understanding of how to talk to these kids, because it's a different generation. And we are flexible and the way that we approach things, we're able to customize our programs because now it's us. We're the ones making these decisions. We don't have to ask anybody for permission. So for us, that's our competitive advantage.
Yeah, I think it's a really great mix that you have. Like, I'll even go back to what Paul you said around the reputation, like the credibility you have that, and even the resume. So it's not just the intention to do things. You actually have the experience having done it. Like you have demonstrated, you have the capability, and then to what you just said, Derek. I mean, the way you engage with the customers, the stakeholders in your world, right? And it's so like it's a great. I use the word the great marriage, right? Of capability and then the actual intent of how you interact with people. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean that's fantastic, and maybe that's the I mean, if you're competing with these big organizations that have been there, maybe that's your sort of your secret sauce, your way in, and well, you're already taking off, right? So,
Absolutely.
let's back up then to, I guess, a year ago, a year and a half ago,
Yep.
right? When you two first said, "Oh, okay, maybe let's do this, whatever this is," right? Because sometimes it morphs, it takes on these iterations, right? What were some of the like the preparation that was involved? So you probably, I don't know, coffee, sat around, said, "Let's do this." What were some of those next steps to move from idea to execution? What happened? How did that go?
So I can say this myself. I'm kind of the pusher kind of thing, right? Like I'm silent, whatever, but I'm a pusher on certain things, and I'll see something like 10 steps ahead, and I'll be like, okay, this could work. Let's do this, that kind of thing. So, um, Derek mentioned earlier, that we were part of other organizations, right? And being through those with those other organizations, we learned a lot of what's great, what's not so great, what's terrible, what to avoid, what things to replicate or whatever, those kind of things. And, we've gone through all that. And I always kept saying this to Derek. I'm like, it's our brand. It's our brand. Like even when we're with other organizations, it's our brand because everyone, no matter what always, as Derek said, are approaching us. Referees, coaches, players, parents. Like, oh, what do you guys do? Where are you guys out of? All this kind of stuff. So, it really makes a big difference in terms of that. So, the way it was is that because we were going through all those issues, with these other organizations, we're like, listen, I pretty much said to her, I said, listen, we have to do this. We really have to do this. We owe it to our kids, and to the rest of the kids that we've actually been around, because we saw that because our team was kind of, so to speak, dismantled that first time. We saw the kids because we kept in contact. We still keep in contact with our families and all that stuff for years now, and we're seeing what's happening, with these kids. Hence why we're talking about having the older kids because of the age groups now, right? So we know that we have something special, and those may not realize it at the time, but then when they go somewhere else, they realize what it was, and then they want that back, right? So for us, it was really okay. We really need to go about this, and we both come from the corporate side. We know like structure has to be done no matter what. Like, yeah, there's passion. There's all about, let's take care of this person, take care of no kids left behind and stuff like that. But you have to make sure that you can keep the doors open, right? So we are very strategic on terms of like how to go about that. We're to minimize cost on certain things through our network, our resources and all those things, and really build that out going forward. So yeah. But Derek, I know you have more to that.
Yeah, no, I think for us, like I'll be really honest. When Paul said we should do this, he said he's the pusher. Well, I was pulling in the other direction. I was like, I don't want to take on the extra work. Like I'm investing so much time as a coach. Like, what is it going to be? And it took a good 2 to 3 months for Paul to really convince me to do this. And he was like, listen, this won't work without you. And I was like, hmm. Haha, okay, cool. Thanks for letting me know. And as I started to continue to go through the spiral of what we were doing, because the other organizations we were at, we were doing damage control. Like, we were just coaching, like we didn't have a say in anything. And it was kind of like, we wanted to get a seat at the table. And it got to the point where I realized, I said, you know what? We're trying to get a seat at the table. What if we became the table ourselves? And when you looked at it through that lens, it's kind of like, okay, so what's really required? So we literally met for about another 3 months. We formed a board of directors. We started looking at, what it would take, where would we practice out of, what would that structure look like, what age group it would look like. And before you knew it, we started to actually, build some ideas and formulas and concepts and the name and colors and like it, we always said, we joked around that we should have been recording all of this because I honestly, we could have sold it to Netflix. The amount of work that we put in behind the scenes to get to this point, sometimes it feels like it's a blur, but it was a lot of just late night calls, meeting up at the library, to get a meeting room, just winged nights, like just, and this is on top of our regular work. And so for us to be in this situation now, the only thing I can say is we're truly blessed. Like we don't look at this as a situation where we're like, hey, we have to do it because it's something that, we're going to make money off of. We're saying we have to do it because we want to make a difference in the lives of kids, in the lives of, parents, in the lives of just our community. And so for us, this is a mission now, right? This is not something where I'm like, hey, let's do this for a while and get out. No, no, no. Even if our kids are done playing basketball, this will continue. And we hope that at some point in time, our kids can come back and continue to build this with us.
Yeah. I'm curious. You mentioned you had a board of directors. You're talking about, I think you said brand or colors. Maybe that was colors, right? So that's, I would describe it as fairly structured or it makes sense, right? And then there's the sort of less structured part when you build a business when you're in, and I mean this, you're really into the idea of what you want to do. And you're like, you can, Paul, you said you can see 10 steps ahead, right? So how do you balance, or how did you, and how are you still balancing that, oh, I can see 10 steps ahead, let's go, let's get there. I can do it all versus, hang on, let's step one, step two, because
Right.
I feel sometimes it's difficult, right? You may want to go 10 steps ahead because you can see it and it's real, but then there's a risk where maybe you may miss something. And then if you take too much time to step one, step two, step three, you may also miss something, right?
Right.
How do you balance that?
Well, the thing I can say is that with 10 steps, there's always 10 steps forward and a few steps back, right? You can say how many steps, right? But the funny thing about it is like Derek and I were so aligned that it's funny. For the amount of time that we've known each other, I could be literally thinking of something, or he could be thinking of something, and then I'll say it, so we're so aligned in terms of like the direction, because we know that we're not looking, you heard it earlier, more of a boutique. We know, like, to be honest with you, we get so much people that reach out to us, especially like already, like in this second year, that, oh, as coaches, or they want to bring a team, or parents asking for that, like so many things, but we're like, we can't do it yet because we can't spread ourselves too thin.
Right.
And we still have to establish ourselves a certain direction. And I've learned within business, it's better to say no to something rather than say yes and then can't fulfill it, because then you ruin your own reputation. So it's better to take care of what we can now and then work towards that direction. Because we have a plan that, of course, we want to, have a certain amount of teams per age group, girls want to have grassroots development, all those kind of things. But we know we have to walk first, or at least crawl first. That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
So to answer your point, like simply like we, as much as like, vision and all that kind of stuff, we're like, okay, this is what the end goal is. Okay, how do we get to that part? And then come work backwards, those kind of things. And then we'll have those milestones kind of things. So
Yeah. And there's one thing that I can truly say, and Paul said it too, we're very like-minded. And so if he says something to me, I'll take it in, I'll digest it, and then I'll say something back. And by the time we're done, there's a value add build that we have where it's like, okay, this makes sense. Now let's look at the execution. Let's look at the timing. Let's look at the investment and see how that makes sense to us and when we can do it, right? And so we are very, like, we treat this like it's our baby. And, when you have a baby, You want to nurture it, you want to grow it, but you want to make sure that again you give it the right type of nutrients. You're giving it the right amount of time to truly, crawl, walk, run type thing. And that's what Paul was referring to. And that's kind of what we talk about in our business perspective. So, for us, we are looking to scale, but we're looking to scale in the right way. And like Paul said, we're in discussions with, coaches and, parents looking for us to take on certain age groups. But again, I stated this before, it is quality over quantity. And so if we can't do it the way that we believe we should, we won't. And we don't think that we're hurting ourselves because at the end of the day, it's our brand, it's our reputation. And we want to make sure that, again, we've started a lot of businesses and we've seen when businesses start to scale too quickly, they lose some of that founder vision. They lose some of that, what got them there. Now, what got them there might not take them to the next level either, but there's always that delicate balance that you talk about where it's like, okay, we're going to make sure that any step that we take, it's a calculated risk, but we factored in what those risks could be and mitigate that as much as humanly possible.
How do you, so you need to grow, you're going to grow, you're already growing, people are knocking on your doors. Earlier you talked about you being, both of you, you talked about, this reputation and this engagement, the way you connect. You used the word boutique earlier. How do you scale that, right? Because generally those capabilities are difficult to scale, not impossible, difficult. And especially your focus on quality, which I think is great. I'm just curious, what is your thinking now how do you grow and not affect what, people are coming to you for, right? Because it's only two of you now. What thoughts have you had around that?
So interestingly enough, although it's only two of us, I'd say over the last 6 months, we've actually added additional headcount to the organization. So two of us run it, but we have people behind the scenes that are helping us to actually, build this program. We have guest coaches that come through as well because we like the kids to actually hear a different voice every now and then. That's why we call it an academy. We've added elite trainers to our program now, which gives them, specialized training in certain areas that allows us then to focus on other areas and then take on other aspects of the business. We have a strength and conditioning trainer, a strength and conditioning coach. So we're putting in the infrastructure to allow us to, again, scale. But obviously with that we also need more coaches. Now, the reason why we haven't decided to scale to the extent that we could is because we need coaches who are like-minded, who buy into the culture, who have a certain level of understanding, energy, who have core values and principles that align to ours, both, in the gym and outside of the gym. There's also the balance of volunteer coaches versus paid coaches. So, we're working through all of those details now to understand what that framework could look like, but that's going to be the test, right? So again, having two teams in 2 years or a year and a half wasn't necessarily our plan. We thought that we'd get to two teams. And like Paul had mentioned, we're a little bit ahead of schedule, but at the same time, we're not looking at it to say, okay, well, you know what, because we're ahead of schedule now, let's continue to push to get to 5 teams next year. We're saying, hey, we're at 2 teams now. Okay, what does it look like if we add a third team? And then to what capacity would that require us to actually take on? And who do we have that could actually help support that third team and potentially lead it as well? So we're going through that stage right now to try and figure out what that looks like. But in no way do we have a timeline to say, hey, we have to have it happen by a certain time. We know what we'd like to have it happen, but if it doesn't, it's not the end of the world because we're going to map it out to the point where it's going to be done right and it's going to be executed the way that it needs to be for us to be efficient and effective at building this business.
I'm curious, as you look back, I think you started this in August 2024.
Yeah.
Right, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So from then till now, what would you say were some of those foundational parts of the business that were core to allow you to continue to be successful in year 1, set you up for success in year 2? What really was that important that really, stood the test of time so far? Anything stand out to you?
Um,
I would say, um, and I mean it's under Paul's umbrella because we have defined roles. Um, but we knew that we had something special in terms of our ability to deliver a program, but I think it's our marketing,
Mm,
um,
yeah.
and awareness that really has enabled us to get to this point where we have this second team. And the exciting thing about it is, we're always looking to figure out how we can evolve. We recently, actually, in December of last year, so 2025, we just brought on board a director of social media, who's really doing a phenomenal job, of really accelerating our brand. And she's just taken the bull by the horns. And we couldn't be happier to see the impact that she's had. And really, what's happening now is we have that arm working. We're also delivering on the court as well with, solid results, team engagement, team building. And so now, for us, we're really just starting to take shape as people are trying to figure out, what we're doing, where we are. We keep meeting a lot of parents on the east end of the city who are asking us if we're going to be out that way. And we're like,
mm,
well, unfortunately, we're on the west side, but hey, in the summertime, the weather's nicer. Come check us out. Like, if you really want the best for your kid, as a parent, you'll drive. Um, because for us, I mean, I drive to Brampton for my oldest because he's playing in a high level squad. Would I love it to be closer? Absolutely. But if it's the best thing for him and his development, there's no events that you'll go to provide for your children. So for us, you know, at least having those discussions lets us know that we're on the right path. And now we're passing the eye test. And then when we tell people, hey, follow us on social media
mm.
or follow us on this platform, they're really seeing it. And they're like, wow, these guys are really doing something different. And so, I'll give you an example. We just did it by complete accident, but our final practice of the year, we do something called Unks versus Young Bucks.
Yeah.
And what this is the parents of our children will compete against the children, the
Mhm,
players.
mhm, mhm.
And we post it, and it's just fun to compete. But we put it on social media and we started getting responses where people were like, hey, next time you do it, let me know. I'll lace up, I'll suit up, I'll come out. And it's like,
Yeah,
well,
Yeah, it was crazy.
right. So like that's just something that we just kind of stumbled across by accident. We just wanted to kind of have like that final, thank you parents for your support. Thank you kids for a great year. Let's just all come together and just, have fun in the court. And so, little things like that, it's different. You don't see that, so that's how we're creating our own lane and our own path.
yeah. So just to go back to, and I gotta say I do like that. Was it Unks and what was the other?
Unks
Unks versus
versus
Young Bucks.
Yeah,
yeah.
Unks was, yeah. I could see how that would attract people.
Yeah.
But back to your marketing, because I was curious. Well, when you say, and I was gonna say not to give away any secrets, but your marketing, so it's pretty public. What is it about your marketing that you think is helping attract people, and that it was so important in year one that
Yeah.
it continues to build your brand, that people are from one end of the city, are interested in your program on the other end. What is it like in the message, in the marketing, I guess?
So the thing, like they're gonna say, like at the beginning, I did a lot of the marketing, right? A lot of the, the posting and all those things. And in terms of the vision, like, when we were talking about earlier, colors, the way the structure of, the way things are coming out, all that kind of stuff. I've done that for years.
Mm,
So it's something that, I'm very passionate about. But to Derek's point, we needed someone to be able to, take that specifically away from me. So they pretty much will have my mind, of everything of what we're looking for, how we need things to be laid out, frequencies, all those type of things, the look and feel, like everything on in terms of that. But it comes out so much quicker because when we first were doing it, it wasn't coming out that often because honestly, I was like, I would say to Derek, yeah, I'm going to get it out. I'm going to get it out. And a week goes by or
right,
something. Right.
right.
So now it's like, we can literally say, hey, can you get this thing done? Put this together, blah, blah, blah. Or actually, she's actually saying to us, okay, I'm going to get this done. I need this information from you. So I love that. So it helps a great deal, because then when we go out there, like we were saying earlier, we're out there talking, to parents, talking to, people out in the communities. And then, we tell them to check us out, and they look at our page, they look at, what's going on in the, Unk versus Young Bucks, our team building events, just like our cookouts and stuff like that. Like, just all the community stuff, they see this.
Right.
And it's all branded like cleanly, a certain way, a certain look. And I can truly say that I see other programs or other things, organizations doing these things, but they're not doing it the same way. So we really stand out in terms of how we're going about it because of branding and being consistent. So it's huge. And that's coming again, like to, the whole corporate side of things. Like we have to make sure that, we are running this as a business, but at the same time, it's heartfelt, that's the difference, right? So to make sure that, we're taking care of who we need to take care of at the same time.
Yeah. And there's one more piece that I'd add to that too, which I think makes us very different. And when you see our marketing, it's intentional, but we have a very multicultural team. We have a very diverse team, different races, backgrounds, and ethnicities. And we ensure that we promote that, not because we're like, hey, we want to make sure that, but it's very inclusive. And so, no matter what background you are, what we say is, if you're somebody who's passionate about the game of basketball, if you're somebody who wants to come to an organization where you're going to be challenged, you're going to have some fun, you're going to grow, you're going to develop, come one, come all. Like we are all working towards one common cause. We don't care what you look like. I don't care, what music you like. I don't care how you dress. If you want to come to our organization and you're willing to put in that work, and you buy into what it is that we're trying to do, let's go.
Yeah.
And so I think, people normally identify with things that they can relate to. So when you see that as a parent or as a kid, you're like, oh, okay. Like, and so, for us, the one thing about us is we make sure that we put the program and the kids first. Very rarely do you see any images of myself or Coach Paul. It's always about the kids. It's always about the program. That's what has to be at the forefront of everything that we do. And we're very intentional about that. We spoke to our director of social media. We said, listen, she's like, do you guys want to be featured in these shots? We said, no, it's not about us.
Yeah.
It's really not about us. Make sure that the kids are there. And just so you're aware, 100%. And so you're aware, we get the sign off from parents when they register to make sure that we're allowed to put their kids on social media because you got to get that clearance. But nonetheless, that is something that we fundamentally try to execute against at all times.
Yeah, and I'll say again, it's like there's this good match, this nice combination of Derek, what you just described as representing the community that you're in, that you're doing business with, my words, right? And then Paul, to you, the consistency, I'll use the style, the focus around brand, right? Like again, it's like these two elements coming together and creating this product or this visual of what this company is about and what this academy is about. It's just a great combination.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
What were some of the setbacks? Some of the missteps, some of the, oh, we shouldn't have done that, or we won't do that next time. What were some, not all, maybe some of the ones that stand out. Paul, what about you? What was on your list first?
The one thing I would say, like for our very first year, right, of building the first team, I think what it was, I would say that I can definitely say for myself specifically that we underestimated our own capabilities and allowed the fact of, we learned with this, actually, I should say, is that, parents would say, yes, we're coming with you, or this and that, or, all that kind of stuff. So banking on that one thing, was something that we learned not to do, because we built relationships and all those kind of things. But at the same time, if you think about it, we don't have that final say. So we have to make sure that we keep on pushing, bringing out the brand even more so, making awareness, getting out there, those kind of things. So like at the beginning, we weren't really out there as much as we should have been. And that actually hurt us. It hurt us at the beginning, But once we realized it very quickly, and we're like, okay, you know what? We're gonna struggle through this part right now,
Yeah. Yeah.
but we'll build. We'll keep building. And honestly, it flipped the script completely by the next season. Like actually within the same year in the summer, it flipped
Wow.
the script. So we were like, okay, we know what to do. We know how to move forward with it and how to replicate it, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was one of the things.
Yeah, yeah. Just to build on that too, I would say, yeah, we kind of made some assumptions to Paul's point, and so we probably didn't recruit hard enough, especially in that year one. And I mean, we were literally fighting tooth and nail in year one to stay afloat. We when we realized where we were at, we were trying to go to different games and practices, trying to find bodies to make the program just come to life. And we spent a lot of time. And I would say probably the biggest challenge and setback was when parents were challenging us on why you, um, because one of my mentors used to always say like, "Hey, you can get tickets to the dance, but what's gonna make me want to dance with you while I'm there?"
Mm.
And when I thought about what that meant for us here, so many parents, they'll send their kids to multiple teams to have tryouts. And so, when coaches of established programs hear that they're considering a new program, they'll always find something to say about them about, oh, well, they're new, they're not reputable. Do they have this? Do they have that? And we really didn't have much to actually push back or challenge back on that, other than the fact that we said, hey, we've been coaching for a while, but a lot of parents are extremely reluctant to want to go to new programs because there's always those hiccups or those, kind of, speed bumps that,
Mm.
new programs have to work through. And so, we didn't necessarily get traction that we had expected. And it was a gut punch, but we never lost faith because we believed in the product that we had. We believed in the brand that we were trying to establish. So we just said, hey, if we can just, withstand these, turbulent waters,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
we'll be okay. And, like we said, now we're at two teams and, we've turned this corner. And so for us, there's still turbulent waters because we're still a new organization, but now we've got you know, a body of work to speak to say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it.
Yeah.
This is why we think that we could actually be a benefit to your child and also to you. Because at the end of the day, if your child starts to develop more confidence, he's gonna be better at being organized, better at keeping his room clean, better at following instructions and being able to execute certain things. So we're really trying to speak to parents on a different level than I think we were in year one. So for us, we've taken that negative and really turned it into a positive and made
Yeah.
it a strength.
Yeah.
And just sorry if I could add to that part
Yeah.
too, is that, you know, me talking about like, like the struggle in the beginning, like the parents that we spoke to and all those things. Now, those same parents are reaching out to us,
Mm.
right? And they're realizing, oh, you guys actually have something here,
Mhm.
and we're getting messages of this like constantly. So it's actually a really good thing. And we kind of get a laugh out of it, kind of like, wow, all we had to do was just keep going, because it's that whole trust factor too, right? When you're new, new and shiny and everything, like how good are you really? You know what I mean? Are you built well? That kind of
Right.
thing, what's under the engine, so under the hood, sorry, so those kind of things. So
Yeah, and just the last thing I'll say is it shouldn't have been a surprise because I mean, having worked in the industry that I've worked in, a lot of there's a lot of customers, consumers who, there'll be those who they see something new and they'll jump on it. They want to be the first to say, hey, I'm here. But there'll be others who are very stubborn, set in their ways, and will stick with what they know because they're comfortable. And so when I apply that same logic to this, when you're asking parents to invest, thousands in a program, um, I think we underestimated what that really meant to them
Mm.
and what we really need to do to
Mm.
convince them that we are the right investment and the right bet,
Yeah.
for them. So, I think there were a lot of good learners that came out of it, but it's made us that much more, like I said, efficient and effective and make sure that, and we'll talk about later on, but there's a value proposition to what we're providing to parents and to the kids.
Yeah, yeah. And it's good that well, I think this is in general that you were able to recognize what needed to change, right? What wasn't working, and you made those changes, you recalibrated, and you are now seeing the positive return, right, of those changes.
Absolutely.
Unlike you're not seeing results still, you've changed it around. And Paul, I'll underscore something you said about momentum. Just keep going. And keep improving, not just keep doing the same thing, right? Keep
Right.
improving as you're going, and to your point, Derek, just learn from those mistakes, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, I'm curious, back in August 24, well, no, it was 3 months after you finally agreed, Derek, to get on board, right? So getting into the fall, how did you guys think about who's going to do what, right? Because you both have the inspiration and the passion. Derek, you were coaching. Paul, you even played and you coach. But how did you say, listen, Paul, you look after these parts of this business, and Derek, you look after these parts? How did you come to that? I'll use the word agreement or understanding.
You know what the funny thing is? We never really spoke about that actually specifically, right? But it just aligned. It just fell into place because we both, understood each other's strengths. Like for example, like anything for coaching and all that. Like I'm just like, so coach, what are we doing with this? How is this going? Like, you know what I mean? Like, because I always say to him, like he's like the mad scientist, you know what I mean? Like he'll go into the lab and he comes up with all these different things. And once he brings it out, I'm like, okay, I got it. All right, let's do this, blah, 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 and go with it. Right. So cause for me, like with playing the game, like it's a really good, it's good how like our approaches are different. Right. So like for me playing the game, I'm able to bring that to the table in terms of, you know, you're teaching the plays and all those kind of things. And I could be like, listen, this is the play, but this is something you should be looking at when this is happening because he turned his head this way. You should do that. Like these little things that I've learned from my own experience that I can pass on. So it's like, that's just one aspect. But like, even with the business, you know, I happen to just be in the marketing side of things, the merchandise side of things, those things. Derek's like numbers and like spreadsheets for days and like all that kind of stuff. And then the business vision, it came together, because we're very observant in terms of where we're coming from, and our own experiences and everything. And on the corporate side, being like executive directors, whatever, that kind of thing. On that side of it, you see business differently rather than when you're just if you want to, well, like a common worker or whatever, so to speak, right? That kind of thing, right? So we bring that to the table and we're able to really, like, we'll overlap on things, but we're also able to like really accent one another, like really level, like bring up the levels on stuff all the time. So it's really cool.
Yeah, we from day one, we've just always complimented each other. And to be honest with you, and Fall might laugh at this, we actually didn't define our roles up until about 3-4 months ago. We gave ourselves titles finally. And so, for us now, because we needed it. If we're gonna scale, it's fine to kind of take on certain things as they come along, but it was like, no, we need to have some structure. And so now it's to the point where we do have defined roles and titles. However, what we now have is I might lead things on the basketball operations side of things, but I never make a move without talking to Paul about it first. He is going to lead the side of strategy and marketing, but we're always going to be informing each other, consulting each other, or before we make a move. And so, now, because again, and I hate to, beat a dead horse here, but because we've worked at our organization where there was so much overlap, there were too many cooks in the kitchen, and it just didn't work. It was almost like, we weren't sure which way the ship was going to go.
Right.
For us, we learned from that. And we're like, no. Listen, end of the day, I'm 1A, he's 1B. And then on other things, he's 1A, I'm 1B. So we just feed off each other. And it's funny, the best way to describe us is we're like-minded, but we have different personalities. So we always see angles. So the best way to describe it, if I had to look at it from a basketball perspective, he's Shaq, I'm Kobe. You know, like
Yeah.
I'm
Is
the
that because
person.
of my height? Is that why? Yeah.
Well,
Wait. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I would have seen it the other way around, but I'm not going to say this.
well, no. Well, no. So the reason why I say that is because Paul is very. People will gravitate towards Paul because he is extremely tall, 100%. And he's one of them guys where when you see him, he has a certain energy. Me, I can have that energy, but you know how Kobe can be somewhat controversial at times because he kind of just was a little rough around the edges. It can be me as well.
Okay,
So,
okay,
Okay, I guess.
you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Standoffish a little. Okay. I mean, sorry, I'm just asking. I'm not saying because I know.
no. Well, I mean, you might know a little bit, but no. But anytime where there's been a situation, Paul's been the one to calm the situation down. I've been the one to just say, hey,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so for us, like I said, we are like-minded. We see things through a certain perspective, but because we have different personalities, we actually, like I said, complement each other
Yeah.
in terms of how we look at it from a business perspective, even from a relationship perspective, and then how we look at things from a customer service perspective, how we look at things from a player perspective, the way that we try to engage. It's different, and I think for us, we've learned to embrace that. We don't try to be, we don't try to step out of the lane. We are who we are,
Mm.
and it might not be for everybody, and that's okay. But if you're on board, I promise you're going to get the best possible experience you can expect in terms of what we deliver and how we go about it.
How do you?
It helps. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead,
It
Paul.
help-
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. No, and I was just gonna say, and it helps that we actually respect each other's opinion and things that we say, and value each other in terms of that, and that's huge because I've been in situations where I'm like, you're saying this, but that doesn't make sense, man. I don't believe what you're telling me. You're not gonna follow through with this, right? Those kind of things. But like with Derek, it's like I like the fact that, I'm not the only one. You know what I mean? Like that's huge, man. I say that to Derek all the time. I'm like, yo, I'm not the only one. It's both of us. Like, it's like it's like I know I'm doing what I need to do within my lane. I know that he's doing what needs to be done also, and then we'll always message each other like, okay, yeah, this is taken care of. That's done. Blah 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 blah. Like honestly, like the amount of time we message each other, we get to the point where we're like, I'm not sending you a text message or whatever. I'm sending a voice note.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, is this too much information, right?
Yeah.
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 So we just it's good.
What about when you have to, two different points of view and you have to make a decision? So I'll say this way: how do you deal with conflict? I mean, conflict's a big word, but when you think differently, but you have to make a decision. How do you resolve that?
So
Okay.
both of us, both of us have strong active listening skills, right? And the term active listening, I don't know that many people use it as much as they probably should or could.
Yeah.
But it's important, I think, sometimes to digest things being said, and take a step back, think about it, and then give your opinion or your perspective. And so I can honestly say, we've been working together now almost 4 years now? Yeah, 4 years.
Yeah.
And I think we've only had one true disagreement. And it wasn't really a disagreement. It was something that I did, and he was like, "What the hell?" So that's the Kobe side of you coming out. But outside of that, if he said, "Hey, no, let's do this," I've always been like, "Okay, hold on, let me think about that for a second," and I'll take it away and I'll say, "You know what? Maybe we could do this, but what if we do it and we make a slight tweak
Mm.
and look at it from that perspective?" And he'll say, "You know what? Let me think about that for a second." And then he'll come back. And so, as opposed to it being a flat out no,
Right.
we'll always value each other's thoughts because we know we're trying to do it for the right reasons. And so now it just becomes a matter of, okay, well, how do we incorporate it? And how does it make sense to incorporate it? And so, like I said, for as long as we've been working together, we've really never really had that much of a difference of opinion because we've always thought about it from a player perspective, a parent perspective, the organization's perspective, and then how we would then want to look at it from a parent's perspective. Like we always put ourselves in the place of our parents or
Yeah.
if we weren't running this organization and we were the parent of a kid, how we react to it when we heard this information. And so we often say that we are our parents are our clients, our kids are our customers.
Mm.
And that's very different because in most cases, you won't look at it from that perspective. But from a customer perspective, the kids are our customers, right? Like if you think about like retail grocery, right? Without customers, no one's putting anything to the till.
Mm.
Well, without our players, our customers, we don't have a team.
Yeah.
But the clients are our parents and they're looking for ROI. And the ROI is some of the things that I touched on before, which is again the on-court basketball development, but the off-court in terms of building that leadership capability, in terms of building up their confidence, in terms of the physical fitness. Like that is, as a parent, a client, what they want to see. And so when we treat it from that perspective, we always make the best decisions for the program.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm curious, as you were building this team, I mean, you just talked about you hired a director of marketing, right, to sort of have that more full look and continuous look on that part of the business. Other than being aligned to the vision of what you both want to do, how are you selecting who comes on board? How are you selecting which is the right referee, which is the right supplier, whether that you're getting into merch or whatever sort of equipment? Like, what are some of the sort of other characteristics that are important?
Yeah. So the way I can put that, a lot of the things, either fall under Derek's side or my side, so to speak, right? So if you want to talk about merch, for example, like I have a lot of experience in terms of like, upholstery, like clothing, like merchandise, reselling, all that kind of stuff, right? So but and this is actually something that we both do, which is really good, is that I'll have my expertise in that, and then I'll, vet out whatever I need to vet out, and then I'll be like, Derek, we need to go to such and such, such and such, such and such, so he can see it too, understand it, so that if I'm not there, he can take care of it too. You understand what I mean? And the same thing goes with him. Is like anything that needs to be done, if he can't be there, it's to make sure that I understand it also. It's not that I'd be doing it or anything like that, but we have to make sure that you understand each part of it, because it's almost like being an executive. Really, actually, it is just being that way. Being an executive, you need to have a bird's eye view of everything. You have to understand, like what's the main picture, what's the big picture of things, right? So that's really how we approach a lot of this, or everything really. And it's been working very well. And when we're bringing in certain people, it's funny, like even the other day we were talking about someone, like I was just like, yo, you know what, such and such would be great, and I didn't even say the person's name, and he said, oh yeah, you're talking about blah 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 blah. So we were thinking the same way already, because the thing is, as you keep hearing us say, like our culture, right, the culture of what we're trying to build here, the foundation, the structure, how to make this grow, we both came up with that together. So we know what type of qualities of people that we're looking for in order for it to be able to grow with us, because it has to be bigger than us. Like we know, we only have a certain amount of time that we will still be able to continue doing this at the capacity that we're doing it right now. So we need to make sure we have the right people in place, so we know, who we're looking for and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it makes a difference.
And I mean, some of those qualities that we're looking for, and it's going to sound, well, some of it might sound cliche, but having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, their communication style, their energy. I'm a big energy guy. Sometimes you can meet people, they don't have to say a word, and you can just get that feeling. You're like, ooh, I'm not sure what's going on there. Or sometimes they can just come up to you and just, kind of just smile and say, hey, and you're like, oh, they seem like they have a good spirit. So, we look for that. Their core values, their principles, their fundamentals, how do they view, coaching, and how do they look at, kids, and, what is their why? What is their purpose? Why would they want to do this? Right. So, those are some of the things that we look at in terms of, who we would bring in, and we will not settle. We will not compromise, which is why we are still taking on a brunt of this, because for us, it's about fit, and if we didn't value this, we would just have random people coming in just to take off the workload. But for us, it's not about that. It's important that, like I said, we bring in people who are like-minded, who buy into what it is that we're trying to do, who understand the vision, who have that same passion, and will just own what they do, right? That owner's mindset, and the entrepreneurial spirit, it has to be there, or it's just not going to work. So, those are some of the things that are really key for us.
Uh, I'm curious, as you look to build out this into year 3, year 2, 3, 4, and beyond. Well, let's actually just talk year 2 and 3. What sort of strategy or thinking do you have to continue building credibility, right? So, you have a good base, people are knowing you from across the city. But as you look to grow and get more people to trust you, do you have a sort of a framework in mind, sort of a specific tactics that, we'll do this or we'll do that? Not to give away any secrets, but is there something that you're looking at to build that trust with parents ultimately?
Yeah. So I think for us, we've talked about how we want to, continue to, be involved in the community. I think for us, and again, I won't give it away, but we want to start doing some work with charities, as well to kind of, build some more goodwill. We haven't yet engaged in it yet because obviously, it's, we're building it brick by brick, but having, reliable sponsors who are reputable, that we can align with to say, hey, you know what, they have bought into our business, and you know what, they are partners that we would align with, and suggest that, you know what, if you're looking for particular products, you go there to help them understand that, you know what, we are not just a basketball organization. We are people that are involved in our community and, in businesses that, mirror the same values that we have. I also think, for us, as we continue to expand, we want to do things, and I won't go into too much details, but we want to get some of these kids out to, like, post-secondary schools so that they can understand what it could be like to actually, go to these schools, play basketball for these schools, meet some coaches who are coaching older, I start to give them a taste of, hey, if you persevere, if you work hard, if you're, being, investing time in not only, basketball skills, but your schoolwork and your grades, this is what could be there for you, right? And I'll say this much. For us, I would love nothing more for us to be in a position where we look back and say, hey, we had a bunch of kids that went to post-secondary and, played university sports, and, God willing, maybe one or two go play professional overseas. But for us, we want to look back and say, how many doctors, how many teachers, how many lawyers, how many police officers, how many different people did we help to provide that structure that went on to do other things that have now allowed them to actually go and start families of their own, to go and start businesses of their own, to go and start, like, whatever that is. That's what, when we talk about legacy, that's what we're thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And it goes back to, like, our network, realizing, what it is that we have at our fingertips, so to speak, based on our experiences and, just over the years. So to Derek's point, a lot of these things we have, are a phone call away that we can do these type of things, right? So we just need to make sure that, the structure is there so that we can sustain this and maintain it to, for longevity, for our legacy. Absolutely, like you said. So it's really important. Yeah.
What's mission critical for you in the next 12 months, right? Where it has to be number one or two, but let's say number one, to achieve what you want to achieve, and ultimately to, what you're saying, Derek, and Paul, you're saying the same thing, to enable, to build this mindset that can then go on and do whatever it is they want to do, right? Successfully. What is mission critical?
Like-minded coaches, because we know we need some, in order for us to really achieve, our ultimate goal over the next, I'm going to say, 12 to 18 months. Continued buy-in from our players. Every year, we're trying to figure out how to, enhance and evolve the program. We're never trying to stay stagnant. I'll say this much because I talk about it from a business perspective, but the needs of consumers and customers are changing, month by month. The needs of players and parents are changing month by month, right? And so, we're constantly trying to keep, stay on the forefront of what that looks like. Us to continue to train. I'd say as basketball coaches, we're humble enough to know that there's still things that we need to learn. We've been doing this now, for 4 or 5 years, but we're up against coaches who've been doing this, for 30 years. And so we still know there's more for us to improve upon, and that excites us and motivates us. So making sure that we're getting the right level of training, and then exposed to, techniques that are always changing within the sport because it's happening a lot. The game's changing a lot.
Mm.
Now there's positionless basketball. And so how do we ensure that our players are getting the right level of training, exposure, and language that allows them to understand where it's going?
Yeah.
And I would say not necessarily in 12 to 18 months, but within the 5 years, um, having our own facility.
Mm.
Right now, we're in a much better position this year than we were last year, but we're still at the mercy of others in terms of having to obtain those gyms. I think for us to truly scale this business,
Mm.
it's going to be critical for us to have a facility of our own so that we can actually control how, what, when, and where we do certain things with our teams. And not only that, also look at it from a perspective of other teams out there are probably going to need something as well, because the costs of gyms are going up astronomically, and the availability of gyms is really starting to tighten up.
Wow. Wow. Paul, what about you? What are your thoughts on?
Let's see. What did he leave out? Let's see.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this from his list, or maybe you got something new.
Yeah.
What do you think is most important?
Well, it's that intentional growth, like he Derek spoke on it, like with coaches and also volunteers, our system, like the whole culture, the pathway, for the athletes, from because we're gonna have like those from grassroots level going all the way to the competitive to whatever levels and stuff, right? So it's just making sure that we're able to sustain this, this whole this train, that kind of thing, right? Of keep going, because the hardest thing for me, and I bring it back to like, when, I urge it when we first were speaking, and I said, for me to trust a coach with my own son and any of my boys, right? So trust is huge for me. So with that, we need to make sure, like, the coaches, those that are facing our kids, that are facing the parents, that are facing, the public, like all those kind of things, we have to ensure that they follow, like, our pathways, because it's very important. Yes, there are, little, situations that may occur, but it's like, that's something that, it has to be from deep within. So that's going to be our hardest part. And that's really what's going to really control how our growth can be. Because if we want to ensure that our culture, that, the brand and everything is like, where we expect it to be, and our legacy to truly be out there, we have to make sure that those that we have around us within the organization are on the same level of mindset and, direction is what we need, because otherwise it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
It won't work, right? I'd rather stay as a boutique and be sought after with the two teams rather than have 20 teams all across and all those kind of things. And then, we have a bad reputation based on a certain situation, those kind of things. So
Yeah.
that speaks volumes for us,
Yeah.
How, how do you balance this? I'll use the word tension between, you both have said this is a business, and it is, and you've also talked about the impact you want to make through your customers, right? And the community that you're building and working with charities, which is not only just a credibility play. I know you want to really deepen your connection through that as well. How do you balance that tension with, what we'll call this sort of social driven mission and this business, which is profit, not driven, but profit oriented, profit led? How do you maybe balance is not the right word, but how do you manage those two disciplines?
I don't hold on a sec, Derek. I know you're gonna go into depth in it, but I can say this simply, to be honest. Um, I really believe that it comes naturally for us, because you know, you heard me say it quite often. It's because of, you know, the way I was actually brought up. Like, I wasn't brought up with a silver spoon or any of that kind of stuff, right? So I understand the struggles and all those kind of things. And then, you know, being able to build myself, I had my mentor, you know, get me up, and you know, and now I can be a mentor to others, right? Based on, you know, my career and all those things. So for me, it's natural in a way of, you know, balancing both. Yes, there are challenges at times. Of course there always is challenges, but I'm always up for it. So to me, it's more of just being able to decipher the difference, you know, of what it is, right? And you have to be aware, because, you know, yes, you want to help everyone. You know, we love to say, you know, no child left behind, you know, that kind of thing. Each one teach one, those things. But the thing is that we need to, you know, also look at the business side of things. It's like, okay, is this making business sense right now? Because if we can't maintain, you know, for the larger picture, then that's the wrong direction of what we're doing. Maybe we need to rethink that and see how that goes about, right? So that's how I go about it anyhow.
Yeah, it's well said. It is a constant battle. But again, you know, we talk about balancing, you know, the experience for the kids and for the parents. Uh, for example, there are a lot of programs out there that are taking their kids down to the U.S., the States, to play in certain tournaments. And while I appreciate what that means for kids and parents who will say, hey, we went to New Jersey, or we went to Philadelphia, or Pennsylvania, we went to Arizona. For us, I always say, well, if we're going to ask our parents to make that kind of investment into their kids, there has to be a reason for it. And so, you know, while we look at it to say, hey, how can we create the best possible experience, we also look at it from a dollars and cents perspective to say, well, wait a minute, how do we ensure that anything that we're going to invest in, again, there's an ROI there. If we're going to ask parents to invest in gas and hotel money and food, then there has to be an ROI for that. And if that doesn't make sense, then we're not going to do it. Now, that being said, we know that, well, for the most part, these kids don't understand what's happening right now because they are, you know, in the grind, they're in it. But I know just from playing competitive sports, the memories that I have still to this day, the friends, the brotherhood that I formed, I still have a couple friends that I played soccer with. They have families now. Their kids are playing soccer, right? But I know what that means, and so for us, we try to ensure that we make the right financial decisions that put us in the position where the kids benefit from it. We as a program selfishly will benefit from it, but it allows us to still have enough profit being generated where if we need to reinvest back into our team and our program, we absolutely can. And we've been doing that, right? There are certain things that we said that we would do, but there's things that we're doing over and above because we believe it's the right thing to do. And we believe long term, it's going to provide kids with a better opportunity to develop, to form more of a bond, and for parents to really see their kids actually gain a level of confidence. Like we just played 4 games on Saturday over the weekend, and it was probably our best weekend of basketball that I've seen with the team. And you know, we got back to practice, and some of the parents, they were excited. They were talking about what they were seeing, and we're like, listen, everything that we've invested in so far has gotten up to this point, and it's been the right decisions, 100%. And we are still in a position where, you know, because of how we've been managing the funds that have coming in, we're doing more things for the program that we said that we wouldn't necessarily do, but we see it as a value add for these kids.
Yeah. Both, you don't need me to say this, but both great, you know, ways to explain how you're managing that tension. Yeah. So I started off, or earlier on, I talked about you're doing this in addition to jobs that you have, and we know you have a family. So how are you managing, these priorities? How are you balancing? Balancing is not the word. How are you managing these priorities, right? Because I would say generally as the company grows, it's going to demand more. Yes, you're going to add people, but you need to vet those people, and it sounds like you have a process in place to do that. But what are some of the challenges you're dealing with?
Where do we start? Actually, you know what? It kind of goes back to your last question, in terms of like the balancing and all that kind of thing, right? And where the challenges are, what's, those things. I think that is probably the most challenging part for
Mm.
me anyway, because I'm so passionate about it. And because my boys are involved, like they play basketball and everything. So I want to make sure I'm doing the best that I can for them, be able to provide as much as I can and all those things. So it's like balancing that. And then of course there's work, right? So it's like, all that all together, it kind of blends together at times. Like there'll be times Derek and I are talking during the day and it'll be like, we're at work, right? Yeah, we are, but we're talking about this stuff, like, you know what I mean? So it's like really getting it all together. Like it's working. It definitely does work. But when the season's going, like, because we have the two teams and it's us two as a coach of both of them, we're able to, like, make sure the schedule works out very well, because of the two leagues and the type of thing, or three leagues, I should say.
Three, yeah.
Yeah, three. But but it's still a lot, right? It's all the weekends, like for the most part anyway. And it does get really busy. And then, we have strength and conditioning, and then we have, like, practices and all of that. So it's kind of like you feel like you need a break, but then when you're there, you feel good. You feel good about it. You get that feeling like, yeah, this is why. This is why, that kind of thing, right? So, like one of the best things is, like, when the kids, like, they come up to you like, thanks so much, coach, really appreciate it, my shot feels better or whatever. Or the parents come up to us or message us to say thank you so much. And like, give us certain gifts. Like there's one parent, he gave us a gift like of our first team. It was a picture in black and white of the first team, and it says, and it said on the back, like, from humble beginnings, right? And it's like, I actually have that, like, with the basketball that we got. Remember the basketball that we got
Oh yeah,
too, but
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Bartlett's team.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I have that, like, on my mantle thing, and I'm just like, man, these are my whys, because I wouldn't know how much of an effect that I bring on to someone else, until they let me know. Yeah, as you can realize for yourself, who's influenced you and stuff, right? So when you hear or you see these type of things coming back, it's like, yeah, we have to do this. Like, we got to do it. So let me balance everything out. So, and I always say to Derek, like, we got to get this going so that, we don't have to worry about the 9 to 5 stuff, kind of thing, right? So, and that's the thing, and that will come. That will come, because we know what we have to do, and do it properly with intention, and, it'll work out. So, it's
Yeah.
time.
I mean, from my end, I'm about to get real deep here. So for me, you can't do all of this without making sacrifices. And what I'm not willing to sacrifice or compromise is, time with my family, and time for me. So it's kind of like an acronym that I have here, right? So it's T for M, literally time for me, and then T for F, time for family. And for me, it comes down to, and it's a common theme that you're going to hear me say here, but it's, quality over quantity. Like you can be home and not be present. Like you can be around your family and not be present. For me, my boys, they're getting older now, and there's going to come a time where they're not going to be around. They're not going to be home. They're going to be out with their friends and so on and so forth. And so for me, when I say the sacrifices that I make, because now we're running our own organization, and because I know there's time that need to, sometimes it actually takes a toll on my social life. But my purpose, I feel, is bigger than that because I've been doing social things for, I'm about to date myself here, but for many, many years. And so, my purpose and my why has taken shape over that now. And so, even though I'm not necessarily doing as many things socially, I'm dealing with more people all the time at work, at basketball. So I'm still socially engaged. It's just in a different form now. right?
Yeah.
But it's my choice. It's not like I'm like, oh, I'm going to practice today. I'm going to see my parents, and I don't want to deal with them. It's never that. I'm actually looking forward to it because I'm kind of like, hey, how are you doing? How's things going with yourself? I'm seeing your kid, he's looking better, and I'm seeing him improving. And so for me, it doesn't feel like work. It is work.
Mhm.
Don't
No, it,
no means.
yeah.
But it doesn't feel like work because it's something that I enjoy
Enjoy.
doing. And I remember one of my mentors said, hey, if you can find something you're passionate about and get paid for, go for it. And I was always like, huh, okay. And so when Coach Paul says, hey, we want to get this going because, we want to kind of get away from, the 9 to 5 that we're doing, that's absolutely my motivation. If, we can build this to the point where, we're able to scale it. And again, when I say this, it's not going to happen overnight. So by no means, but if our goal is, hey, you know what, 5 years from now, we achieve, our ultimate goal of, reaching our target number of clubs, then we're going to say, okay, what do the next 5 years look like? And then those discussions become a lot more in depth in terms of, okay, well, now we're at the point where, maybe we don't need to do the coaching because we have coaches now.
Mm-hmm.
Our kids are now, for argument's sake, maybe they finish university or post-secondary, whatever it is, so they can come back. So, for us, we feel like, and this is going to sound crazy, but we feel like, hey, we boarded the plane and we've taken off, but we're still in our ascent.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't reached 30,000 feet yet where, we can remove our seatbelts and just, walk amongst the cabin. We're still ascending, right? So, yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. Um, Other than the knowledge and complementary skills and complementary personality that you both have, why did you ultimately say, yes, I'm going to work with this guy? Like, I mean, like, oh yes, he knows business, he knows marketing, he played basketball and he coaches. Okay, yeah, but all that aside,
Mhm.
right? Like, what was it about each other? Whoever wants to go first.
I'm going to go first. So what I would say, like to your point, obviously, meeting Derek as a coach first, and then asking him to be the assistant, and working with him through that time. It's like, okay, this guy, this guy really knows basketball. Like he has a passion for it, right? And I saw that like from the get go. I'm the type that I'll look at you, I'll see how you are, analyze you, and everything. And I'm like, okay, I see what you can do. Okay, let's see what else can I make around it, like to enhance it. That's just how I am. And I saw how he worked things and dealt with stuff and everything. And I saw also, excuse my language, he doesn't take crap, doesn't take bullshit, right? That kind of thing, right? And I was like, okay, I like that. So it's like, okay, that's a good thing. And then just had conversations about, what, let's go with this what other club, see what's going on and everything. And we would have conversations within that club of, oh, they should be doing this. Or, you know what, we should make sure this part works, make things better. Why are we doing damage control? Like all these things that I could see, right? And then it was a parent that actually said to us that, why are you guys doing this? Why don't you guys do your own? And I took that in because I was like, hold on a second. Yeah, why aren't we? Because I've always been that entrepreneurial type mindset. And I said to Derek, I said, did you just said that? And he was like, yeah, I was just talking blah, blah, blah. I said, no, 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 no. Did you hear what she said? With that. And, so that was in my head. And I was like, okay, I was like, Derek is the person I want to do this with because I know how he is as a person because I was with him like 2 years since now at that time, I guess it was. And I already knew if this is the type of business we're going to go into, I already knew that we're not going to be, bucking heads and have issues or stopping as much things, right? Like we're actually going to really enhance one another, like, really evolve things. So for me, it was like, okay, this is going to work. So then it was more of like, let me convince them like to make things work and everything. And then obviously, my better half, my wife and everything, she's always looking out for me. So it's like, you got to make sure, and all those things because I know how you are and blah, 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 all those things. And honestly, it just worked out. And we've always, if we said that it's almost like fast friends, like, like, it's like, I felt like I've known him for like, since like high school, you know, and we've known a lot of the same people. We know a lot of the same people, but we never actually really knew each other. So it just made things work out, you know. It felt comfortable, you know. So yeah, for me.
Yeah. So from my perspective, so again, I talked about the fact that our kids, were very close, and so when it was time to actually come together, it was kind of like our slogan is our one of our mantras, I should say, is we're an organization that's by families for families, and our families, our oldest, our youngest, they all just mesh like it's just one big, they all get together. It's just you wouldn't even know, right? So for me, it was one of those things where, year one, when we were coaching together, he was my assistant coach and we had a lot of success, like instant success. We won both of our leagues, two gold medals. And immediately after that first year, I said, Coach Paul, you're no longer my assistant coach. I said, you're my co-coach, right? I said, at the end of the day, there's no more assistant attached to your name. And so, from that point on, we just decided to just bond. And even when we moved to other organizations, it was almost like, okay, well, all right, you know what, you're going, we're going. Like, and so, we just were joined at the hip. And I think, we always shared the same type of philosophies when it came down to business, when it came down to dealing with people. As you mentioned, we knew a lot of the same people, but we didn't know each other. So I could hear from others about, what he was like, and he could hear from others what I was like. And so it was kind of like, okay, well, if they co-signed, all right, let's
Mm.
continue to build. And again, when we were approached to do, start our own thing, and I'll never forget that day, I heard what the parents said, but I quickly disregarded it because I was like, that's gonna be a lot of work. So appreciate your suggestion, but we're just gonna continue doing what we're doing. Unbeknownst to me, Paul was working in the background saying, yeah, we should. And so for me, it's one of those things where, you know, it was something whereby I started to feel frustrated by not being able to build the program that there was a vision for. And I could see how we had to pivot. And at the time, the leadership group that we were rolling up to didn't want to hear anything that we had to say. So, yeah, we took that leap of faith. And again, we talk about year one, we were struggling. We had 7 players
Mm.
for at least half the season, literally. And it was dark times, but between the two of us, we didn't lose faith. We believed in what we were trying to establish. And so I think it's allowed us to just even have more faith in the decisions that we make, and belief in how we approach things, because we've been raised to not quit, to not give up, to fight. And so we're trying to instill those values in the kids that we coach, because that's that's us at our DNA. Like that's these two teams that we have now. Some of them will never know what that was. Some of them who were there, they remember, but some of them don't know. They just, hey, they see us, and now we're coaching. And some of these kids, when we get to the beginning of the year, they don't talk, they don't smile, they don't laugh, they're reserved. Every single season, it's the proof is in the pudding. By the time we're done, these kids come out of their shell. And for us, that's the biggest thing where we're like, okay, now they're there. How do we then ratchet up another level? How do we then make them become leaders? How do we make them become vocal? How do we make sure that they are building, like I said, that team camaraderie and taking leadership and being accountable? Because those are all the things that are going to make them a lot more comfortable on the court and off the court.
2026, what are some of the specific objectives for Legacy Basketball Academy, LBA?
We are going to take the basketball industry, sorry, by storm. And what I mean by that is we know that we are here to stay. We know that we have the ability to be what I consider to be a disruptor in this industry. And I don't mean that in any negative connotation. I mean that we want to reinvent the way parents look at youth basketball. We want to be known for, having kids who, when they play in our program, they can expect to be challenged. They can expect to be in a position where they're going to be um, comfortable with being uncomfortable, but they're gonna have a ton of fun. They're gonna build friendships that are gonna last as long as they want to be a part of the program. And more importantly, by the time that we're done with them, they're gonna be the most prepared they will be to be successful in life. In 2026, again, we will look to increase team count if, again, the stars align here, and we really want to be in a position whereby, we called ourselves Legacy Basketball Academy, but now we have kind of rebranded ourselves as LBA. So a lot of our merchandise, a lot of our
Mm,
swag, our bags, um, it says LBA on them, because what we want is people to say, "Who is LBA?"
mm.
And by default, we're going to say Legacy Basketball Academy. So we've changed a lot of our merchandise now to say LBA because it's shorter, but we want to become that name that when you say it, it's easy to say. And when you hear it, it resonates with, an organization that is fair, that is, usable to be a part of, but is going to produce results for the children to be, again, the best that they can possibly be, point blank, period.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. Um, I'm curious, Paul. What about you? Anything different or specific you see as objectives for 2026 for LBA? What's on your list?
So Derek said a lot of it.
I would hope so, but go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. But I'll go back to it that we're definitely for 2026, like you definitely expect growth, intentional growth, because for us, key objectives is like strengthen our infrastructure is one thing. You heard Derek talking about LBA, the branding of that, and it's actually much easier to say or to recognize or to pick up on those kind of things. So it's a good direction. Building with our culture, that's huge. Ensuring that anyone that comes on board adopts our culture, and and really wholeheartedly, like brings it out going forward. The kids that we have with us, the families, they're gonna they're gonna see a lot, because already we do quite a bit more than what a lot of other clubs are doing, for the value in terms of that. And for us, it's really to ensure that you know we're really providing as much as possible, that makes sense, that kind of thing for all of our athletes, the families, and all those kind of things. So I'm excited for 2026. Right now, like coming to the end of the season, you heard Derek say like our first season, like 2 gold medals, that kind of thing. Like right now with one of our teams, and it's feeling familiar. That's feeling familiar, and that's so it's good to see this, and the kids like to really have some good feelings and all that kind of stuff. So um yeah, we just really want to build this and really showcase who we are as LBA, and just make sure that our legacy is there for sure. Definitely.